Let's talk about getting into real estate with no money down. All right, guys, a little bit of bonus content here. If you're watching this, maybe go back and watch our part on investing and about the part on real estate, because I think it's important. You know, what's the purpose of the extra content if you haven't watched the regular lessons? But I want to talk to you about how you can actually get into real estate with zero or no money down whatsoever. Real estate obviously is extremely expensive. It's extremely expensive to get into in comparison to some of the other investments out there. For example, if you had $1,000, you could just throw money into an S&P index fund, and you know that index fund is going to get you a decent return. That's it. You could do something with $1,000. If you had $1,000 in real estate, for most cases, you can't get anywhere. You need a tremendous amount more money than that. Talking about traditional real estate financing, maybe just to begin with, in most cases, if you are going to go invest in an actual property, in most cases, you're going to get some kind of financing. That financing is going to be an investment loan through, traditional bank. Think of a big bank, Chase, or local small bank. It doesn't really matter. When you invest in real estate, because it is kind of a higher risk for a lender, normally they like you to have at least 20% down. Could be 25% down, could be 30%, could be more, depending on the property, depending on your experience, depending on your credit and so forth. But in general, 25% down is going to get you there into an investment property. The lender is going to be looking at, obviously that's investment property, but they're also going to be looking at the market rent to ensure that the market rent can satisfy that particular mortgage. So let's say you go get a mortgage for $300,000. Let's say the mortgage payment is $2,500. They're going to want to make sure that you can cover the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, all of that with the actual rental amount. So something to think about. But let's say 25% down on a $300,000 property. Like, that's a pretty big, sizable amount of money. Most people don't have that money. So how can you actually get into real estate? Or what are a couple of ways you can actually get into real estate as an investor with one, no money down, and then we'll do another one, which is maybe just, let's call it low money down. The first one, and this is more so for my people out there that are a little bit younger, maybe you're in college, maybe you're just graduating from high school. You can get into the real estate investing business by simply renting out the property you already own, and or renting out a property that you're going to live in primarily. Remember when I said to you that you're going to need, or it's going to cost you 25%, okay, for an investor loan, right? But in a lot of cases, if you're going to go actually live there as your primary property, you don't need that much. You actually need about 3% down, or 3.5% down. And you're going to need some money there for closing costs and things like that, depending on how you negotiate the type of real estate agent that you're working with. They might be able to get some concessions from the seller where they contribute some to your closing costs. So this 3.5% down, let's actually make it, just to be safe for all my guys out there that are going to be not happy with this, but let's say 5% is what you really need to get into the house if you're going to be a primary person. If you're going to live there, it's going to be your primary. Meaning, you go to a lender, you say to them, listen, I want to buy a property. They're going to say, are you going to live there? You say, yes, I'm going to live there. They're like, great. You're going to need at least 3.5% down. But you're going to have some closing costs in there, so you need about 5% of the price to bring to the table. So if you're buying a property, let's just say of, in this case, $300,000 property, 5% of that, you can do the math, but $15,000 basically is going to get you into the door of that particular property, give or take a couple of bucks. So it is completely rational to think if you were, let's say, 16 years old, let's say you're just working at the local movie theater, you're making $10, $12 bucks an hour, you're working 40 hours a week, and you say, you're like, I'm just gonna work as much as I possibly can when I'm 16, when I'm 17, when I'm 18, when I'm 19, that over the course of that period of time, if you're really just working and saving money, you could save up to $15,000 to where once you graduate, you've gotten the credit cards, you built your credit up a little bit, that you can actually get into property, and you'll have the down payment for that, right? So now this is if you're living there. Now the reason why I mentioned if you're living there, and of course is how is that real estate investing, is because the idea is that you would then rent out those other properties. And this is actually a way that I think most of you all should get into the real estate industry, primarily as the first thing you should do versus just trying to go buy a property and put a tenant into it. Buy a property on your own. It's a lower barrier to entry. You get into that particular property and then you can rent out the other 2 rooms. So let's say you graduated high school, now you've gone to college, you're the first year in college, maybe you lived in a dorm for 2 just to kind of get that experience. You go into your junior year, you're now 20, 21 years old. You could then go, maybe you buy a property right around campus, you rent it out to two different friends. And so what that might look like is, say on a $300,000 loan, right? Let's say your payment is, $2,500. You could get, let's say 2 roommates. Let's say it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath or something like that. You get 2 roommates. You have both roommates pay you, $750 or so. And, so that's going to be $1,500 off of the mortgage, of this mortgage right here, which means you're in it for about $1,000. Now, yes, of course, you're still in there making a payment, but you're making out less of a payment. You're in the starting phases of understanding how to pick tenants, screening tenants, collecting rent, and just kind of that process. I think it's a really good sort of stepping stone for you. This is actually what I did when I went to college. My first property that I purchased had 4 different units in it. It was basically a shoebox, had a central living room, kitchen area, and then it had sort of 4 rooms on each end. I lived in one, I rented out the other 3 rooms. Thankfully, I could actually rent out the other 3 rooms and it paid for the entire mortgage. I lived in there for a couple of years when I went through college. I sold it. I ended up making about $30,000 on that sale because the property had gone up in value over the course of me owning it. So a nice way to get into real estate. But that is what I will call what I'll call a low amount to get into a real estate property. But let's say you already have a primary house. Let's say you're 30 years old and you want to get into a property, but you don't have 25% of 30,000. In that case, you're looking closer to 80 grand, 100 grand just to get into your first investment property. And you might be thinking to yourself, like, I don't have 100,000. Well, let's talk about the ways that you can get into a property with actually having little to no money down. And that is a concept called the BRRRR method, BRRRR, just as it sounds. The idea is you buy a particular property, you might rehab that particular property, you rent it out, and then you refinance it. So remember I talked to you in the course and I said a great way to get into real estate is something called wholesaling, where you basically reach out, you call just distressed properties, you offer amount of money on that particular property that's a little bit less than what the current value is because maybe it's got some work that needs to be done. Well, that's what we're talking about. If you knew how to wholesale, the BRRRR method ends up being a very good, useful tool for you to pick up some pretty nice properties. And again, picking those up for no money down. So let me show you an example of that. Let's say I have a $300,000 property. Let's just take the exact same one, okay? It wouldn't be unreasonable. Well, first of all, we need to know the lender. Remember when I talked to you about the F.I.R.E number or whatever, you always want to start at sort of what the end goal is, and then you want to work your way down, right? And so in this particular case, I know if I'm working on an investment property, okay, if I'm working on an investment property, the max loan amount that I'm going to be able to get is about 25% loan to value, okay? And what that means is if I wanted to buy a property for $300,000, I'm going to have to put down 25%, which means 75% is the mortgage, 25% is my down payment. Now, if I want to have no money down, we still need to end at that particular end result, because the lender's not going to give me any more than the 75% loan to value. The value of the loan against the value of that particular property. So what I want to do as a starting point is I want to take $30,000 and I want to take 75%. So I'm at $225,000 is where I need to be all in. This is the amount of money that I'm going to be allowed to have in there as a mortgage. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you. If not, it'll make sense to you in a second. And the idea is that this has a 25% down pay or a 75% loan to value. I'll explain that to you here in just a second. So if I need to be at $225,000, and let's say I'm doing wholesaling, so I want to approach a particular property and offer them something, I know that if the property's value would normally be worth $300,000, so after rehab value, or when it was fixed up, looking great, not brand new, but like whatever, looks great, right? The value, the appraisal value, if I sent an appraiser, should be around the $300,000. But I can't offer them $300,000 because I don't have a $25,000 down pay. If I had to put down 25% of $300,000, I could put down like 75 grand. I don't have that. Again, because I need this loan value to be $225,000. And so what I'm doing is a wholesaling. I might reach out to properties and say, okay, I'm looking for properties that are really about a value of $300,000. So let me find neighborhoods that have houses for sale around that particular point. Let me find a particular property that might be in distress. Maybe the property's been there 20 years. Nobody's fixed it up, whatever the possible thing is. I'm going to go into that particular buyer, right? Remember the wholesaling, and you can go back and watch those videos. I might go back to them and say, okay, I'm going to offer you, $190,000 for your particular property. Okay. And let's just say for easy, let's say we've gone in here and we've offered them $190,000 and they've accepted it. So, we went in, we knocked on the door, we called them, whatever it is. We said, hey, just reaching out to you. I understand, I don't know, mom and dad passed or whatever. You probably want to go to the property. It needs a lot of work. You can't put it on the market the way it is because it just needs a lot of work into it. I'm willing to go do the work, but I need to have some room in it because I'm going to have to do all these renovations. So what they'll do is they'll go, I'll offer you $190,000. The person goes, great, I'll take it, $190,000. They just don't want to they don't even want to deal with it. Maybe they live in another state. It doesn't really matter. The point is, you made an offer and it was accepted. That $190,000 is now the purchase price of that particular property. Okay? Now, you take that purchase price. Because you actually have to do the renovations, you can come in here and you say, okay, well, if I take $225 from $190, that's going to be $35,000. That's going to be $35,000 that I have to play with to renovate that particular property. Okay, so in this particular case, let me back up. The property's value after it was rehabbed and was looking great, $300,000, which means all the other properties in the neighborhood are probably selling for around that particular price. I've identified a property that I realize that needs some work. And I need to know how much how much I can offer that particular person, and how much money I can actually spend in doing the renovations. What I offer plus the renovations can't go above $225. Because $225 is the max loan that the lender's going to give me, because they require me to have a 25% down payment or really a 75% loan to value on that particular property. So I go into the homeowner, I say $190,000, and then I come in here and I do $35,000 worth of renovations. The $35,000, let's say I put, I don't know, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I put $5,000 each bathroom. That's 10 grand, and then I spend the other $25,000 on the kitchen and new flooring, painting, whatever it is, right? What that means is that I've purchased this property for $190,000. I've spent $35,000. The total amount of money that I have in there is $225,000. Now that the property is complete, what I do is I come and I take this particular property and I rent it out. And let's say I'm able to take this property and I rent it out, just like the previous example I said to you, I rent it out for $2,500 a month, right? Now that it's rented out, all right, I then go back to the bank and I say, hey, got a question for you. I have a property, it's renting right now. Technically, I own it in cash. I'll get to that in a second. I own it in cash. I would like to go and pull out or do a cash out refinance, okay? And basically I go to the lender and I say, I want $225,000 back. I know the property is going to be worth $300,000. The bank's going to go, okay, I can do that. Let me pull your credit. Let me go to send an appraiser out there. And let's just say, again, the appraiser comes out and yep, the house is appraised at $300,000. The bank's going to say, okay, the house appraised at $300,000. I can't go higher than 75% loan to value on that particular property. So the most amount of money that I'm going to lend you is $225,000. And you go, that's great, that's fine. Because the only amount of money that you have into the property is the $190,000 that you purchased it and the $35,000 that you had in renovation, which means that they're going to give you a check for $225,000, the cash out part of the refinance, and you are going to recoup all the money that you have into that particular property. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, but you said this is no money down. If I have to have $190,000 to buy that property and I need to have $35,000, that's actually way more than the 25% down payment that I don't have that either, right? So how's that no money down? The no money down part, folks, is the fact that I put in the $190,000 and the $35,000, but I get it all back through the refinance. Right? Again, that only works is if the value times 75% equals that particular number, which is why you want to reverse engineer the math so you know what you can offer and then what you can spend in renovations. And if you go over that, obviously that's not good news. That money, the $190,000 and the $35,000, comes from a place called a hard money lender. Okay, and basically what a hard money lender is a person that's outside of a bank that can look at this particular deal, and there are people out there right now that will give you the financing to purchase the $190,000, they'll give you the money to do the renovations, and you just have to go and complete it and then return back the financing over a certain period of time. Is this loan expensive? Yeah, you bet it is. It's probably 2 to 3% in closing fees. They're probably going to charge you 10%. On the particular money. It's very, very expensive, which is why once you've purchased this amount here and you're doing the renovations, you want to be done with this whole process in like 60 days, 90 days, not too much further than that, okay? So again, let's recap. I'm going to keep recapping, so I want to make sure that you understand that. You've decided that you want to go buy an investment property, but you don't want to sink in $100,000, right? So you go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go find a property, and I'm going to use this BRRRR method. I'm going to buy a property. I'm going to do some renovations on it, so then it increases the value of it. And when the value is increased amount, I'm going to put a renter in it, so I have some income coming in. I'm then going to go to a lender. I'm going to tell them, hey, give me an appraisal. I'm going to pull out the amount of money that is I've actually already in there. I'm going to receive it back in a check, and I'm going to do that because I'm going to use a hard money lender. I'm going to use their money instead of any of my money. Now, let's not get pie in the sky. Can you go to a hard money lender on your first deal and say, hey, I want to go and do this, trust me? No, a hard money lender is generally going to say to you, have you done this before? However many properties have you done? Show me the records. They're going to want to see an accounting. So is this a solution for a new beginner? No, not necessarily. But there's alternatives that you could do outside of this, right? And let's just talk about creative things. And this is just more so what I want you guys to be thinking. Let's say you're 30 years old. You've been putting money into a 401k for the last 10, 15 years. Well, you might have $100,000, $200,000 in a 401k, and well, maybe you could take this particular money here and maybe I could borrow against myself. So I go to my 401k company, I say, let me borrow money. I borrow my own money that's in my retirement account to then buy this property, to then do the rehab, and I use that money, or maybe I use that in credit cards or whatever it is. And then once that whole refinancing is done and I get my 225 check, I go back and I repay the 401k, right? Maybe you come in and you can get a private investor and you don't use a hard money lender. Maybe that's mom and dad. Maybe they help you out. Maybe it's somebody else. The point is that you can go in and you can purchase real estate in this particular way with no money down. That can be a very, very powerful tool to building any kind of real estate portfolio and really supercharging your wealth building. Imagine if you were 16, 17, 18 years old and you got into the wholesaling business and you really learned like how to do really, really great wholesaling, right? And remember, wholesaling is the idea is that you're not doing any investing. I'm out of colors here, but you're actually just going to go in here and you're just going to be calling homeowners and you're going to be making offers. You're doing this exact same calculation, but you're doing it for someone else, right? And so you're going to go into them and say, you know what? I'm going to offer this guy 190. And then you come to an investor like me and you say, hey, I'm going to sell this property to you for $200,000, right? And the difference between the $200,000 that I buy it and then $190,000 that you bought it from the particular person is $10,000, and that's the money you keep. So let's say you're a really good wholesaler and you have the grit and the stamina to go in and just kind of make phone calls and identify properties all day long. You start your wholesale business at, let's say you start at 18, you've been doing that for 2 years while you're going to school. You're going to school, you're getting home, you're working your 5 to 9, and then you're just doing wholesaling all day long. You know, it's not in question for you to make 10 grand, let's say, you know, every couple of months. Maybe you close one property every other month or one, you know, every 3 months or so. By the time, 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road, maybe you then have enough money to actually do this and fund this entire process yourself. But what you wouldn't necessarily want to do is, let's say you're wholesaling and you're making 10,000 or you're making 20,000, whatever it is. And over the course of the years, you've saved 20 grand, or I'm sorry, you saved 200,000 just through the commissions because you've been wholesaling, right? Well, you don't want to take the 200,000 and then just, again, go put it in real estate, because you can buy 2 properties with that, right? Maybe put 100,000 in one and you put 100,000 in the other. But if you want to make that 200,000 work for you over and over and over again, you take the wholesaling process that you knew about, that you now know because you're doing it for other people, and then you say, I'm going to start doing that for myself. So you then go buy the 190,000 and then you buy this, and then you take this, you go get the 225 back from the lender. Once it's all complete, you rent it out, you get your 225, you take the 225, and then you do it again. And then you do it again. And now, instead of doing wholesaling one every 3 months, now you're actually buying properties once every 3 months. And then you wake up 5, 6, 7, 10 years and you have a real estate portfolio of 40 properties. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Just want to cover it. Just wanted to just kind of a little bit different angle of how actually people can create massive generational wealth or massive real estate portfolios with no money down or very little bit of down by using the BRRRR method.